I guess we're going. How's, how's it going, everybody? Welcome to the Digested Productions podcast. I'm your host, Joshua J. Moskers, joined by Klaus once again. Thank you for being here.
What to
Special
do?
guest this week is author of the state's First Amendment, Jack Decker. Thank you for being here.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Happy to have you here. We've been chatting a little bit before the show. We're going to start at noon. It's 12:50, so here we are. Right on schedule. But yeah, thank you for being
Lovely
here.
new technology.
Always a joy.
Yeah.
But yeah, before we jump in, why don't you tell people a little bit about yourself and like your background, how you got into the like political atmosphere regarding like the creation of the amendment, things like that. Yeah.
I was in the military. I'm a U.S. Air Force veteran, and when I was in the military is a totalitarian organization. It has to be, if you think about it. It was a very eye-opening for an 18-year-old. In America, for your American audience, they might not realize that the U.S. Constitution does not apply to soldiers. The soldiers have the Uniform Code of Military Justice, and some of the freedoms you just take for granted, soldiers don't get. We don't have freedom of speech. We don't have freedom of press. We don't have freedom of assembly. We have things that you don't even consider to be freedoms. We don't have freedom of job selection. And I'm not ripping on the military. It has to run this way. If you think about it, you can't have someone just talking whatever they want to say out on the battlefield. You look at like in the Iraqi war, there was what was his name, Geraldo, idiot reporter who told where they were, and he was embedded with the soldiers, and that just freaked out everybody. There's a lot of different stories, and he wasn't only. The military learned about what it means having embedded journalists and had to really come down hard on them. You cannot reveal our location. You have to turn off your cell phone. You cannot, especially those now that have geo tracers. I mean, that's why in Russia, they killed a lot of people that came over, the volunteers came over there because they would talk on their phone. We can, in a battle area, you get on your phone, it's just like a beacon.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. But it was a very eye-opening experience being in the military in a totalitarian society. I'm very amazed by leftists, by communists and socialists in America don't join the U.S. military, because that's what they're advocating is how the military operates, from each's ability to each's needs. I was very fortunate. I had very high aptitude scores, but if you had low aptitude scores, what the jobs that you would be offered to go down and down and down. If you're dumber than shit, you're offered security. There's a guy with there's a guy with an M16 staying out in the field. Wait. And when I was based in Charleston, South Carolina, you'd be driving into the base and look over at the soldier, the security guard staying out in the field with an M16, going, "Don't think the Russians are invading today, dude. It's sad." Yeah,
they work 12-hour shifts.
Well, I mean, it's just mind-numbingly dumb. And a lot of people say, well, those security over there, they're active. No, those are law enforcement. In the military, there's law enforcement guys and there's security guys. You commit a crime on military base, which you'd be absolutely insane to do. The military is really harsh on criminals in the military. But they'll shut down the base like that. All exits end, all exits close, and then they start the search. So that's why on military bases, crimes are either petty or really rare, because all soldiers know as soon as a crime happens, the gates close, and then they go up, then they go for a search. And there's no, and on military bases, Constitution again doesn't apply to soldiers. They don't have to give you a warrant to search your barracks or search your on-house anything. So that taught me a lot. And also at that time, my father died of leukemia. And so it really hit me hard. After I got out of the military, I just started researching politics. And eventually, I became a libertarian, basically.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. And it's, and it was not it was a lot of straws breaking the camel back. And so since that time, since now it's 40 years, I've been a libertarian, been a member of the Libertarian Party. I was once director of public relations and advertising for the Libertarian Party of Dane County. I ran on the ticket for being a libertarian. I ran for the 76th State Assembly District. I got 20% of the vote, which if you understand how much votes libertarians get, that's actually a pretty good total for a libertarian to get. And I've just always been involved in politics. And in my research, I found out about what happened to our U.S. Constitution. And the government we have today was never what the founding fathers wanted it to be. There's always been the Alexander Hamiltons that want to have a very powerful central government. And there were people like Thomas Jefferson that wanted the opposite. They wanted the states to be powerful. And for 100 years, the Jeffersonians essentially won. But after 100 years, the pro-centralized government advocates finally got a pro-centralized government Supreme Court. And they got them to agree with a warped reading of what's called the Welfare Clause, or some people call it the General Welfare Clause, and the Commerce Clause. And that was the crack in the dams that busted everything open. With the Commerce Clause, the crack came because of railroads, because the pro-centralized powers were able to convince the Supreme Court that the railroads had to be regulated at a federal level because they moved so fast. You have to understand at that time, horses ran. So trains were like these magical, futuristic, Superman, faster than
yeah, they'd write in the newspapers like a woman shouldn't be able to travel over 30 miles an hour. It's going to kill all of the babies that are going to be born. We have to not allow women on the train.
Yeah, and
blew their mind, dude.
Yeah, and so that's through that crack they got they warped the meaning of regulate trade between states. The founding fathers meant, because of the problems with the Articles of Confederation, in case your viewers don't know, the first Constitution of the United States was not the U.S. Constitution. It was the Articles of Confederation. Mm-hmm. And this made it the states were just almost independent nations. And you have to understand, at that time, they just threw off a monarch. They threw off a dictator. They threw off a formal government that wasn't even giving them representation, which is one of the battle cries was, no taxation without representation. Mm. And so it was I think, a natural reaction on the Article of Confederation. So let's truly depower, have the federal government be really, really weak. But we had a Shaw SHAY, rebellion, and that showed the weakness of our confederation. So they got together and created a constitution. And they, under the Articles of Confederation, every state had one vote, and there was only one body, legislative body. The president practically had no power whatsoever. They didn't have the federal government didn't have the power to tax. They literally had to beg for money from the states, and the states were, well, we got our own problems, and that was a constant problem. You read about the history of the American Revolution; it was a money problem the whole time through. And so the U.S. Constitution came out, and they broke apart that one body, and they made an executive branch, a legislative branch, which we call Congress, and a judiciary, the U.S. Supreme Court. The executive branch is the U.S. president. And even within the legislative body, there was a big debate between the southern states, who were wanted only a Senate, and the northern states that wanted to be based on population. And they both were, the northern states wanted based on population because then they could rule over the country, and the southern states wanted, by state, so that they would be on equal footing with, at that time, Virginia. I think Virginia was the most populous state, not New York. And it was Benjamin Franklin who came in and just said, let's do both. And that's how we had the U.S. Senate and the U.S. House of Representatives. And so they gave the power to tax, and they had the Federal Reserve, which was destroyed, I think, more than once. Andrew Jackson ran on destroying the National Bank. Anyways, it came about, and but then in 100 years where they got a pro-centralized power Supreme Court, the pro-centralized power advocates basically busted the dam with both the General Welfare Clause and the Commerce Clause, to now where the federal government is almost unlimited in what it can do. And that was never the idea of the Founding Fathers. You read the Constitution, it's very explicit that no, the federal government was not to have all the powers it has now. And there's, and even now to this day, they're still trying to grab more power. And the states had to fight to keep them, but they have the supremacy law, which means the federal law supersedes state law, just like state law supersedes local law, and county law supersede municipal law. I think there are people who like centralized power. In our day, our terminology, you'd call them communists. And I'm not meaning this in the derogatory way. It's just there's a centralized power that decides everything. There's also socialists. We can debate the shades of gray as far as was a communist, socialist, and social democrat, and the Democrat. But they're all about right now. The Democrats are very pro-centralized power, and they weren't always. They weren't always. Actually, a lot of people don't realize that the Democratic Party was just the opposite originally. They were all about the states. The Democratic Party was the party of slavery. They were the Confederation. They were of Jim Crow. They were the Ku Klux Klan. That now that the blacks are in favor of them, well, that came because FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and basically he handed out a whole bunch of goodies, and that's how they won over the black vote. Before, blacks used to vote Republican until FDR.
I mean, a lot of black people are still pretty Republican.
They're growing more that way because of the failure of the Democratic Party. And
because they love the Bible, dude. A lot of them love the Bible.
A lot of people, a lot of Democrats who are not black do not understand how socially conservative blacks are.
Yeah.
They and they're very upset right now because of the welfare state that was generated, basically ripped apart the black family. If you were a woman and you're pregnant, you get more government assistance if you didn't have a man in the house. Initially, the black families used to game the system. The man would leave and then sneak back in at night. But then they had welfare officers that went out and knew that was happening, and they'd do these surprise visits to make sure that the husband was not there. And it just broke the society. But anyways, there's if you are, some people say, "Oh, you're a Federalist." The Federalist actually means the opposite. It means you're pro-state, not for the federal government. I call it more Hamilton. If you're a Hamilton, you're for a centralized government. But the problem with that is one size fits all.
Mhm.
And that might work in a tiny country like Netherlands, England, any of the European states. In fact, right now they're finding out with the European Union is not as easy as they thought it was going to be, and that the European Union is falling apart. Britain exited, and now there's other ones that are planning to exit as well. Our country is massive, unbelievably massive. Europeans do not understand how big America is. It's kind of funny. I had a guy from London, and I was going to meet him in New York City. And he said, "Oh, hey, I got a week. Let's go and see America." He says, I want to see the Statue of Liberty. I want to go down to Washington, D.C. I want to see Disney World. I want to go and see the Grand Canyon. It's like in a week. Oh, in a week. And they just don't understand the scale.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
In Texas, you can drive 12 hours at the speed limit and still not leave the state. And our country is so diverse. Netherlands is the same topography over because it's just a small little state. Here in America, we literally have swamps, we have deserts, we have mountain ranges, with snow-capped mountain ranges, we have flat plains. Florida has to deal with hurricanes. California has to deal with earthquakes. The Midwest has to deal with tornadoes and blizzards. One size fits all with such a diverse country. And there's also, just talking about the industries, there are some places that have a lot of coal. They mine coal. There's other places that, all the states that border the Mississippi, they deal with those issues about barges, etc. North Dakota doesn't deal with barges at all. They deal with railroads to get to the barges. It's just, my feeling is that the states could do a better job because they're closer to the problems that they have. I'm a libertarian. There's a libertarian movement in New Hampshire to succeed from the Union. I'm not a secessionist. We have a great constitution. We just need to fine tune it. And the founding fathers never thought the Constitution was perfect. They literally built into the Constitution how to amend it. So that's why my amendment is trying to give back power to the states that I think are, not just because the founding fathers wanted that. I don't worship the founding fathers. I don't consider them gods or that they were perfect, but they were very smart men. Probably one of the smartest men that has ever lived was Thomas Jefferson, and Benjamin Franklin, literally a genius. And it was not, our Constitution was not just slapped together, like rushed together. There's a lot of thought, a lot of very intelligent people, very well-read people, and they corresponded at that time with each other. If people were to read the Federalist Papers, it shows them having conversations of what this country should be. And so it's a very well thought out Constitution. It is the longest living Constitution in the world. Some people don't even realize that we're young. We are technically a very young country in comparison to any other country in the world. I mean, our countries in the world measure their country in centuries. We've got 2 coming on 3. It's just the way it is. But my amendment is to catch America, bring the government up to speed with what we have currently in technology. If you like, I can go through it with you if you like.
Yeah, what's your number? Let's start with your number one. Not like your first one you put, but what's your opinion of the biggest change we need to make?
The biggest change is, quite literally, the Section 1 and 2.
There you go, right off the rip.
Yeah, that's why I moved it right to the top.
Mhm.
Is because when our country was founded, the fastest transportation was boat or horse. And Congress was only a part-time Congress. Almost all of them, except for like Benjamin Franklin never held a position, but almost all the founding fathers were farmers. George Washington was not a full-time general. George Washington was a farmer. Thomas Jefferson was a farmer. All these were farmers. And so they would have to be home to oversee the crop that year. After harvest, they would then travel to Washington, D.C. to literally is called winter, to winter in Washington, D.C. And they try to get to Washington, D.C. before the roads became too muddy and before they froze over, because it's really hard. You have to understand, roads at that time, there were no paved, there was no gravel. Yeah. It was mud, and it was, if you were in a city, brick. But the truth of the matter is that even in the city, it was manure covered everything.
Did any of them like die in transit?
Yes, this is real common.
Damn. So if one of them say it was like, oh, we're waiting on the governor of Tennessee, he died, and they didn't know for a few days, so they're like, well, Josh,
a few days,
guess what,
weeks.
buddy? Guess what, bud? He was supposed to be on the 5th. You're the new governor of Tennessee. That joker died of scurvy.
Yep, and that's why they would let you, if you look at the correspondence, they tell people, I'm planning to take off at this time. I plan to arrive at this time. Mm-hmm. We would never do that today. We pick up the phone and say, hey, yeah, I'm taking off for your place. I'll be there. They'd write a letter. The letter would go by horse. And all of our conversations we have, imagine they're slowed down by weeks. Like the conversation we're having here, every question you have would take weeks to get to me. I reply, and the reply would get weeks until it gets back to you. And that's saying that the roads are passable. Okay, the Postal Service, there's no trains, there's no airplanes. So if the roads were not passable, the mail waited. And if you want to correspond with someone overseas, you're talking weeks upon weeks and possibly months just to get a correspondence back and forth. And that's why if you read the letters at the time, they'll list off a whole bunch of questions they want them to answer. And they answer all the questions, and they send all their questions, and that's how it was done. But because of the slow transportation, you would never try to run a government by way of postal mail. Mm-hmm. It would be impossible. So that's why they had all gather in Washington, D.C., so they could see each other, and legislation could happen within a relatively short period of time, all of it being winter. Mm-hmm. And when winter was over and the roads thawed out and dried out enough to travel, Congress would close the session, and all the legislators would go back to their farms to handle the next crop season. And then this is a cycle over and over again. And but now today, well, I'm showing you what we can do right now. I'm in Iowa City, Iowa. Where are you guys located?
Pennsylvania.
What? Pennsylvania? Mm-hmm. Okay.
So we still have manure covered streets with all the Amish and internet. Right.
Oh yeah. Yeah. When you really see it. But, yeah. But now we have instantaneous communication. I can send the document I sent you guys have of my amendment. It was sent to you instantaneous. But we get upset now that, it hasn't arrived yet. I don't know what's happening. It hasn't arrived yet. And you're talking about minutes. Yeah. If it goes beyond a day, people start panicking, especially in the business world. It's like, why isn't it here? Because they're used to immediate communication. Mm-hmm. Even our mail now is overnight express, overnight delivery, except for the post office. My brother recently sent me a priority mail. Supposed to get here in 3 days. It took over a week. Yeah. But all of this technology has now changed. And so we had the Senate, which is to represent the states and the overall interests of the state. Mm-hmm. You had the House of Representatives, which is to represent the population, not representing the states. It was just kind of a easy conceptualization of grouping these House representatives in a way. Mm-hmm. But the districts did not overlap. The U.S. House districts don't overlap. People complain about gerrymandering, but there's no overlapping of the districts.
Yeah.
So you are representing a very specific district, but is cumulatively considered to be part of this state.
Mhm.
But the reality is that House representative only represents that district, and
Mhm.
you have House representatives that are on the opposite side of bills, because maybe that district is industrial and this other district is suburban, and you have different needs, and you have to represent your different needs, or you don't get reelected.
Yeah.
But my bill takes the consideration that we have now advancement in technology. And so my feeling is the whole point of the senators is to represent an entire state.
Mhm.
Well, who is truly the best representative of any state? Well, that's the governor. Okay.
Mhm.
He is elected to run that state. That is literally his job or her job.
Mhm.
It is to look after the interests of that state. Now, he has state assembly members, and then just like with the U.S. House of Representatives, well, I'm from Wisconsin, okay, there's Milwaukee is a major metropolitan city, but I'm from Platteville, Wisconsin, which is a college town in rural Southwest Wisconsin. Our needs there are different than what it is in Milwaukee. There is Green Bay, which is a big industrial town, city in Wisconsin. You might know them for having the Green Bay Packers. Okay. Well, literally, they were Packers. They were meat packers. That's why they're called Green Bay Packers. They're an industrial town.
I thought they were fudge packers this whole time, dude.
Yeah, if you're not a Packer fan, you're anti-Packer fan. We're surrounded by states that absolutely hate the Packers. But Wisconsin is insanely loyal to them.
I got one quick question for you.
Sure.
So it'd be basically, instead of that big like boob looking building, we just have a Zoom meeting for Congress and stuff. Instead of what is that thing called there, Josh? You know what I'm talking about?
You mean Capitol Hill?
Yeah, Capitol Hill. Instead of that.
Okay.
So if somebody hacked in to the Zoom meeting and started like posting like wieners and stuff on it, you think they would get tried the same?
I'd be elected from New York City would probably elect them.
Right. Well, should we? Oh, yeah. But you think they would get tried the same, like as the January 6th boys, if they stormed the digital halls of Congress instead of the physical halls? You think they'd hold them the same? Like, oh, they held it up just the same. They
Probably not. Probably not. Just like you wouldn't. Just like it'd be a difference between someone cussing you over the phone and cussing you in person. It's very different experience. I don't think, and also you have to understand, the internet was created by the military. The internet was not created to send porn. Okay, the internet was literally, it was created out of the Cold War era. It was to have a form of communication that Russia could not knock out with a single blow. And if you understand how the telephone lines were built and designed at that time, you could take out a telephone center and all those telephones in that area couldn't do anything. Okay. The internet was actually a military application. So, you took out that there? We're routing it through this way. In fact, we're sending out these messages all over, not just one. We're sending out these messages all over. You can't knock it out. Sorry, dudes. That literally what the purpose of the internet was form of communication for the military that was impossible for Russia to knock out.
It's called ARPANET. ARPANET.
Yeah. I dealt with it when I was in the military. I was in the military in the early 80s. I actually dealt with that. Mm-hmm. And fortunately, I think you could say fortunately, military perspective, unfortunately, the college professors and their graduate students are going, hey, we're having a beer party over here. Why don't you come on over? And they'd send these messages over the ARPANET, because they're part of it. And the military doesn't really, not big into using its resources to organize pizza parties. Mm-hmm. And eventually the military just got upset and said, out, just out. get out of here. And that's when that was taken over by the universities, and now the military has its own internet. The military still use.
Yeah, they definitely use it. They use it now to talk about pizza parties, though. They send emails. That's where they send. They send the emails on their.
But that was
those pizza parties.
Yeah. The military net is highly secured. Has to be. It's also encoded and encryption. It's encryption. It has basically infinity encryptions now, and they're always working on making it more and more secure. The quantum computer is the biggest threat to their internet now, because with a quantum computer, you can break any cipher instantly. But they're working on basically making a quantum code, a quantum cipher, and which would require 2 quantum computers to be able to communicate. So the idea that would it be disruptive? Yeah, it'd be disruptive. I'm sure PETA will do some crazy shit like that, and other ones will do it, and they'll think that it's a huge victory. But every time you do it, just like every time there's a break, there's a security breach in the military, it's not like that breach is left open. There's a whole bunch of people that come in and go, okay, all right, how do we plug this hole? And so they'll learn how to plug the hole. And that there'll be is whack-a-mole, and that's how the military views it, as whack-a-mole. You're just constantly hitting. It's just the way it is. It's arms race. Okay, this bullet can penetrate this armor. Okay, now we'll make this armor better. Okay, now we're making a bullet that can penetrate that armor. Okay, now we'll make armor that can't penetrate. It's a never-ending arms race, and that'll be with the internet. And right now, there are people that have shut down the internet and blackmailed corporations, etc. Every time they do that, those windows are plugged up, and makes it that much harder.
I would think the difference is with the government, there's red tape that you have to deal with. I think that's why it's more whack-a-mole.
The military has red tape like you can't imagine.
Yeah. Well, I'm saying it's they have to, there's, processes you have to follow in order to deal with, the issues as they pop up. Whereas the aggressors, if you want to call them that, they just work on their own.
Well, there's also red tiger units. The military has red tiger units. They go by different names. But basically, these are units that their sole purpose is to breach whatever security measures you have. And then they turn around and say, okay, here's how we breached it. They might be able to offer you a solution. They're not required to, actually. It's just, we breached it. Here's how we did it. And then basically DARPA and those people go, okay, how do we plug that hole? I very, very likely, I would imagine initially I could see where the Congress would ask the military, hey, guys, we pay for your bill. Would you mind if we use your internet? Because we know that's really secure. And the military would probably go, yeah, we'll let you use it. But I bet you within a few years, the military said, no. We helped you build it. Now you do it on your own, and we're getting you out of our system. Because anytime, like in military, you let that in, it's just another window of opportunity for someone to come around and mess. And I don't think any people really want our nuclear missiles to be messed with. So that's why the military is such close in. But I can see the Congress going to the military saying, hey, can we use your system for our communications? I can see where the military is saying, yeah, we'll hook you up. But they'll always have breaches. You cannot, there's going to be 4chan, there's going to be anonymous, there's going to be, militant activists, PETA, who are always going to be able to have some.
Yeah, dude, PETA, right down there with 4chan.
But they're going to do stuff that's going to be disruptive, and however they can be. And if they disrupt it in a little bit, they'll call it a victory. And all it takes is a teenager with an IQ, an Einstein level IQ, going, oh, okay, I found out this breach. So basically, what my amendment has is we don't need to have Congress meet together in DC anymore. Our communication process, our communication is now instantaneous, nationwide, worldwide. Okay. the president can get into Air Force One and run the federal government from Air Force One. And that's a moving platform. So we no longer need to have them show up. So the states have a representative, and I think the best representative instead of U.S. senators would be governors themselves. And then I take that section 1. It also, I'll call that up. So it also allows, section 1 is each state gets 1 vote in the U.S. Senate. That vote goes to the state's current governor. The current state governor can serve as a U.S. vice president, and the governors cannot be compensated in any way or form for their service to the U.S. Senate or the office of the vice president. And that's as for the little nitpicks on that thing is the reason why they can serve as vice president because it's the most worthless political job ever created in, I think, in history. The Will Rogers joke, one thing you have to do is wake up and ask how's the president, and your job's done.
Would you say that the role of the vice president is you're just electing who you think would be the best person to take over as president, though?
No. It's never been that. Never been that. No. It is to, let's take Trump. Okay, why was Pence chosen? Now, Trump says he's religious, but he's really not. Trump has been for abortion. He's now again abortion. Pence was picked because he had a connection to the religious right. Okay. Look at Biden. Why do you pick Kamala Harris?
Yeah.
She, during a debate, accused them of rape and sexual assault.
Well, I know the reality. I just meant in the ideal scenario, you would be hoping you'd be able to vote.
The ideal scenario is everyone. We don't need cops because everyone just is good.
Yeah.
The reason for Kamala Harris was picked is because she checked off 2 boxes. She's female and she's a minority. Boom. And
so would you be more for no cops or maybe just like an Andy Griffith type scenario? Got to ask, put the bullet in,
Yeah, we mean
Barney Fife.
Barney Fife. Andy's run was always loaded. Barney Fife had to
right. Yeah, that's what it was.
And the reason why is because he might actually use it. So that's a little bit gun control for him, but it's all comedy. I think there's different crimes requiring different types of police officers. I think there's patrol officers that need to make a presence in the community. I think is good. I think the closer the police force is to the community, the better. I don't think there's a need for the FBI. I think the FBI is a political weapon. Whoever's in the White House, same as the Justice Department, it's a political weapon. It's no longer about justice, which is kind of actually we should call it like the Department of Injustice. But we have criminals that, look back in the 1920s, Bonnie and Clyde, Dillinger. How did they evade the cops? They walked across a state line. Now the cops' authority ended at that line. Today we've solved that. Do we need an FBI anymore? No, because the states figured out, you know what? If you're chasing a killer and you're hot on his tail and he crosses the state line, you are good to go. Let us catch up with you and then we'll take it over from you. But we don't say, we no longer let, you're in pursuit. And all this agreement with each other. Every state, all
the Porky's defense, dude. They're in the other county. You can't follow us anymore.
They can't follow. Well, it was really the state that they really couldn't cross the state line. And that's where the bank robbers of the 1920s, Dillinger, they took advantage of Bonnie and Clyde, took advantage of it. But then they said, well, that's part of the reason kind of why the FBI was created. And but now there's cooperation treaties, agreements between all the states. That's not really needed anymore. We evolve. I mean, there's some people that this company, this technology that's advancing, etc. You have to advance at the time, but not everything should continue on. The purpose of the FBI role was there was a purpose for it at one time, but there's no purpose for it now. It's just used as a political weapon.
Where do you think we should hide our black ops then? Like when we need to destabilize a region to keep gas prices low or something. Where do you think we should hide our black ops?
I know you're joking, and you are talking to a libertarian. I'm not really in favor of black ops, and I think a lot of our problems are caused because we have these black ops.
You got to crack 2 eggs to make an omelet,
Yeah. Well, there are criminals that now operate internationally, and right now the world is learning, kind of like how the states learned that we have to have cooperation so that cops can go across state lines and still have the power of a law officer. But then once that state troopers and county sheriffs and cops join in the debate, join in the pursuit, you can watch this in videos, really call it off. So now we've got it. And so the cops from the other state pull away, and then those cops take over because they've now violated. Okay, just running away from a cop is against the law. So on that one excuse alone, that's how they can continue pursuit.
Unless you're messing with the Oklahoma Highway Patrol, dude. They're not backing down for anybody.
Well, the Texas Rangers,
Did you ever see the Oklahoma Highway Patrol YouTube videos? They're like hanging out of the side of cars, shooting at guys. They're insane over there.
There is another federal cop force that people commonly forget, and that's the U.S. Marshals. And those are hardcore
the
cops.
Coolest named of all.
U.S. Marshals, right? They are. They do all the prison transfers. When you have a prisoner in one state and they're extradited to another state, is the U.S. Marshals that show up and take that. They're the ones that transport criminals. What is that airline called? Con Air. There was a movie about it, Con Air.
Yeah, great movie.
Nicolas Cage.
And there was that's their airline. They don't fly criminals on United Airline. It would freak out too many people.
Now, I have seen them bring a guy in shackles on the airplane before.
Yes.
They had the 2 air marshals. They sat him in between them, and he sat right in there in the front in his shackles. They brought him on last, and then he left first. I have seen that.
And I've seen that too. But when you're talking about moving masses of prisoners, that's the U.S. Marshals. They're Con Air. They'll put in all the prisoners on there. It's not a luxury flight. It makes the economy class look like first class.
Probably like a C-130 type situation, dude, sitting on those nets.
Yeah, but there's also talk about a rough crowd. They do the job. So there's need between the different states, but I think a lot of it is we're just learning it. And that's what's happening right now on the international level. We now have Interpol, which is international police. But there's many countries that do not recognize the power of Interpol. Interpol is only in many, many countries, I think, including the United States, is merely in an advisory role. It is an information hub. Mm-hmm. Here's who's doing what. Here's where they are. They don't have James Bond. Those are MI5. Those are the CIA. Is there a role for them? Yeah, there's a role for them, just like there's a role for military intelligence. Do I believe we should be doing? I'm a libertarian. I don't think we should be destabilizing other countries just because we don't like their current governments. I mean, Iran is our fault and our fault alone. They had a duly elected national leader. We didn't like him because he was flirted with the Russians, the Soviets, and so we replaced them with the Shah. And then, what
about North Korea? I feel like they could use some destabilization. They're starving their own people over there.
Yeah, and that's the problem with dictatorships. How do you take care of them? How do you get rid of them? There are ways to take care of dictatorships, but it's sometimes it has to be the people themselves, and it really sucks, but it has to be the people themselves.
I mean, I think if we give them iPhones with TikTok, they're gonna want out of there soon. They're like, look at how good it is in Ibiza, dude. I want to go there. Get me out of this place.
You should. There are YouTubers who are people who have escaped from North Korea.
Mhm.
And you listen to their videos about what they think America is about.
Yeah, I don't believe all of them though. Some of those guys seem like they're full of crap. They don't look Korean to me. I think some of them are fake.
Well, the ones I follow, they have documented evidence that they are. There are, and again, there's also people that are puppets.
Yeah, but there's also
Just a bunch of
evidence
South
that
Koreans.
there's evidence that Michelle Obama's a woman. You know, I don't believe this stuff. They can fake evidence left and right.
Yeah, but again, I'm a libertarian. I believe you're afraid that the president has too much power. Maybe the president has too much power. Maybe that's an indication that the president has too much power. With my reforms, I create for the first time a dual-powered politician.
Mhm.
Right now, all the politicians are single-powered, and that is, I think, where almost all of our problems come from in America currently. There are federal politicians, there are state politicians, there are municipal politicians, there are county politicians. But the thing of it is, they only have power within that form of government.
Mhm.
Problem with the federal government is you have federal politicians, currently the current U.S. senators and current U.S. House of Representatives. They can only affect the world by passing a federal law, federal regulation. And they're politicians. They want to do something. They were elected not to not do something. They were elected to do something. And they want to, and how they get reelected, partly, is to say, oh, look what I did. It's really hard for a politician to run the things that, hey, I prevented the government from not doing anything, and that's where they want to pass laws. I create, and the governors and the state assembly members, dual powered politicians. They're both federal politicians and state politicians. I believe by doing it that way, now you have politicians that can look at a problem and then go, which would be the better way to handle this problem? Would it be better handled at the state level, or would it be better handled at the federal level? I believe our national defense should be handled at a federal level. I cannot see any state politician that would say it should be. Just like our State Department should be handled at the federal level. I know there are certain states like California that always try to go on their own, but then the Congress says, no, you can't do that. And I think the states will keep them in check. And there's also the Treasury Department. And there can be an argument that we can go back to where every state has their own currency. But I have a feeling that no one's really interested in doing that. And if it happens, it happens. You go to you go to another country, your credit card automatically does the exchange rate.
I mean, you can do that just online in general. You don't even have to go to the other countries.
Right. It's just, you don't need that. But I think the Treasury will still be there. There'll have to be federal taxation to support the military. That was part of the problems with the Articles of Confederation. There was no way for the federal government to raise money for the military. I believe there's a role for the State Department because we need to represent our country to other countries and deal with treaties at that level. And to expect like North Dakota to have their own, diplomatic service, I think is ridiculous. So I think
we cannot rely on Alabama to give themselves a good diplomat,
Well, I think they also would be cutting deals that they probably shouldn't be cutting that might be detrimental for the other states. We have a little state called Rhode Island, and it's infamous for corruption, same as New Jersey, infamous for corruption. So I think that by having the governors being both a state politician and a federal politician and representing their state as a whole, I think that they will look at, and I think a lot of powers are going to go back to the states, because think of you're the governor, okay? And my amendment has passed. Well, in the U.S. Senate, there's not only 50, there's not 100 members, but there's 50 members. all the governors. Well, your power at the federal level is 1/50th of a half of a third. Okay. Congress is a third. The Congress and the House of Representatives in the U.S. Senate is a half, and you're 1/50 in the U.S. Senate. You don't have as much impact as you have as governor of your state. This bill comes up, the state bill, you veto, or you pass it. Same thing with the House of Representatives. I make, what is the number? My amendment were to pass, there'd be, I think, 5,542 U.S. House of Representatives, because this section 2 takes. How about I just read that, so you know what I'm talking about? Section 2: each state's votes in the U.S. House of Representatives is equally divided amongst all that states' state assembly members. Each state assembly member is also a full member of the U.S. House of Representatives. None of them can be compensated in any way or form for their service to the U.S. House of Representatives. So
are we going to be allowing women to hold this position?
If they're nice.
If they're nice.
If they know how to cook a proper pumpkin pie.
Yeah, there we go. Okay. All right. You almost lost me for a second, but you won me back.
Yeah.
I know one of the recurring themes throughout too is the none of them can be compensated in any way or form for their service. Is this
they're already compensated? They're already compensated. Governors are already paid a salary.
Mm-hmm.
The state assembly members are already paid a salary.
Mm-hmm.
You look at Congress. I mean, talk about the most hypocritical.
I was going to say, is this
you're talking no committees, no committees, no like
no committees. Well, no, but they can't be paid a salary. They can't be paid a pension. That's left up to their states to decide what they're going to be paid. Just like, I mean, for all those people, I mean, if you look at my amendment, you just take a moment and you think what people are trying to do, my amendment does it for them. All these people who want to put on term limits, no need. Pass my amendment. Because there are states now that have term limits for their governors. There are states that have term limits for their state assembly members. Though some don't. I'm from Wisconsin. The governor can run as many times as he like. But my feeling is let the citizens of that state make that decision. Why are you making a decision for them? There are states that do have term limits. You can only serve so many terms and then you're done. There are states that have term limits on state assembly members. So you can have that done, and they're Western states mainly. There are states that have referendums where you can pass a referendum and force their state government to do something, even though the state politicians don't want to do it.
You don't think they should have like a minimum, like, but you got to pay them at least this much? Because I mean, I got it for you. Because like Arkansas, they're gonna cheap out. And then all of a sudden, those guys what are they gonna do? They're taking kickbacks. They get corrupt immediately if they're not gonna get any money. Got to give them a little bit of something.
5,000 here. Just 1 second.
Oh, he's got new props. We got
It's just I have it written down. I put the clipboard over here.
There
are 5,462 state assembly members.
Mm-hmm.
While the U.S. Senate, I'm reducing it from 100 to 50. I'm expanding insanely the House of Representatives. How it's done is like in Section 2. Let's say in your House of Representatives, you are given 10 votes. You have 10 U.S. House of Representatives representing your state, kind of. Okay. Well, let's say your state assembly has 100 members. Well, you divide 100 into 10, and each of the state assembly members gets 0.1 vote in the House of Representatives. They vote, those fractions add up, and now we have a majority one way or the other. So for lobbyists, etc., if you're against lobbyists, you should love my amendment. 5,462. Go ahead, dude. Show me the lobbying force that can go around and affect that many people. Will there be? Sure, probably.
What about for the smaller stuff? Like when like Thanodisasa here, if they needed a new fire station, we're not going to bug one of the big boys. They're just going to figure that out here, the mayor and all them.
Well, that's how it's done right now.
Right. Oh, so we're leaving that alone?
Yeah, we're leaving that alone. Bridges across state lines, that's already being done by, I'm from Wisconsin. Neighboring state is Iowa. Iowa has long been waiting to build a new bridge from Iowa to Illinois, from going to Dubuque to East Dubuque. Iowa has the money. Iowa has the money sitting there, has bought all the land. It's all sitting there. But Illinois is broke. And so they can't cough up their end, and so it waits. Let's just decide between those. If there was real need for this, Illinois would find the money. Does the federal government have to get involved? No, because then the pork barrel politics. How many roads go nowhere? There's interstate highway that goes that once went to a factory, which state is, but the whole 4-lane interstate highway was built to get to a factory because this guy sat on the appropriations board, the committee.
I design streets. There's so many just weird ones where I'm like, this guy's got a red light going to his house. How do you hook that up?
I lived for many years in Madison, and there are roads that are one way, and all of a sudden it changes to the other way. Literally, you'll be driving one way, and now the road traffic's going the other way. It is so bad that there's University of Wisconsin Madison, major university. Parents' Day, the city cops go out at these intersections. They're stopping the parents. No, this is not. No, you have to turn right or left, because they will just go. You'll see them. If there's not a cop there, they'll just think, well, who in their right mind would change the one-way direction halfway through the street? So they just keep driving, and then all of a sudden the honks are, and they're like, what's going on? But does the federal government need to come in and have any say in how that problem is solved? No.
I do like NEMA. NEMA's a federal institute. It's our highway standards. That way that all the highways kind of make sense going within each other, interstate.
Yeah, but you see that right now, all those are already being done by the states. The states communicate all the time with each other. Some states.
Oh man, I'm telling you, there's some of them that they already try to skate by it all the time. They would not follow the minimum standards immediately. I'm telling you, at least for the roads, we keep the roads. Those guys, dude, Alabama, again, always back to them. They would immediately, they already do the bare minimum for their roads, for the standards. Yeah. And you drive down it and you're like, this is the worst ever. They wouldn't even do that. They would not even do that if they weren't required.
But I believe that's up to the states to decide. Obviously, it doesn't matter to the residents. So that you are from New York and you think, oh, I think your street should be this way. And well, since we're not on video, Alabama, I go, fuck you. We don't.
For audio listeners, he gave 2 thumbs up.
Oh yeah, 2 thumbs up, definitely 2 thumbs up. But they don't care. Okay, to force another group of people to care about something that you care about is egocentric, elitist, and that's Washington D.C. You have these bureaucrats living in Washington D.C. have never been to probably majority of the states, probably in a handful of states, deciding what these states all over the country are going to do. If Alabama is going to want to have dirt roads, let them have dirt roads. That's their problem. Okay, you don't want to travel through Alabama, you're not required to travel through Alabama.
So if they have, say if it's like say it's like Dole wants to move their oranges from Florida to Texas and they got to go through Alabama, should they have to throw in on these roads they're going to be using to move their fruit? How are we going to get something like this?
Well, it'd be up to Alabama. And first of all, they'd be sending it by way of rail. I'm a trucker. I have transported oranges from Florida to California. I transport oranges from California to Florida. This is every state goes around, and there are some states that trucking companies purposely avoid. We route around them, and just like in Chicago, There's trucking companies that prohibit you from going down certain roads because they have tolls on them. And some are insane. Just for a trucker, thousands of dollars to go down this road that's only like 5 miles long. Here, do this route around. But that's part of the reason why they have that such a huge toll, because they want truckers to not go down that road. It releases the traffic on that road. As far as the transporting costs, they'll do it. They'll figure out a way. They always do. If they may use ships, there's a variety of ways. But having the federal government saying this is the only way you can do it. This is the only way you can do it. These roads should be so I can go down and eat off the road. And I just don't think that that's a role for the federal government.
So what if it's more of a place like where the federal government had to step in because their states was failing them, like in Michigan, where they just were not fixing the pipes. They weren't doing it. They were getting money. They were stealing it repeatedly, and they had to step in and get a federal grant to fix all those pipes that in Flint and all that area.
Well, again, that's making it out federal government as if it's an all-knowing, all-powerful, all-perfect God. And they're not. To think that federal government is any better than state or local government is, to me, indicates that you have not really researched how badly the federal government.
Oh, yeah, they botch it left and right, but I'm saying
the lobbyists coming in.
You're going to get, I feel like you'll have some states where you're going to get some representatives that are just, we got one senator. I'm about to bilk these jokers. And then who's to stop that joker at that point if he's at the top?
They do that now. They do it now at the federal level. Nancy Pelosi wasn't a multi-millionaire when she came into office. Okay, you want to talk about milking the system? If we prohibited Congress, if we outlawed inside trading by Congress, practically every member, except for maybe like Rand Paul and Tom Massey, would be in prison right now.
But wouldn't we be giving Nancy Pelosi more power?
What?
Wouldn't we be giving her more power? Was she a senator? Isn't she a senator?
No, she's a Speaker of the U.S. House of Representatives.
Well, what was she before they gave her that? Isn't she have a seat?
She was a U.S. House Representative.
Oh, I got you. Okay, I'm big.
She was voted to be and now with this thing, with my change, there's 5,462 U.S. House of Representatives. One of them gets to be lucky. One of them gets to be elected to the Speaker of the House, and that little state assembly member gets national attention, as well as the opposing party, their leader. But if you think the federal government is perfect, knows what they're doing, that
not at all.
They don't
watch it.
Federal government doesn't give a shit. That's my position. Federal government doesn't give a shit about anything.
Oh, it took them forever to even. It took them forever to even say, "Okay, we'll come make them fix the pipes." What that takes 8 years.
But that problem should have been handled at the state level. If it wasn't handled on the state level, let the local population deal with that. To think that the federal government knows better than the state governments, etc. Yeah, state governments fail. City governments fail. Detroit went bankrupt. Okay, should the federal government come in and bail out Detroit? No, let them sit in their squalor. Okay, you're a failed state. Here's the beautiful part about America. We're free. The most powerful vote you have is your feet. You don't like it? Move. Look what's happening in California. First time in its history is losing population. New York, losing population. People vote with their feet. Who's getting it? Texas, Florida. Businesses.
We don't want them. They can go back.
And they don't want them. And they're changing. Texas into a purple state now. But the people are voting with their feet. You don't like Alabama? Leave. Alabama.
But I don't want them here. Because then they're all just going to come here, dude. They get them out.
Yeah. But that's a big part about America. You do not need a visa to travel between states.
If I have to toss a few $100 every year to the federal government to keep Ohio up and running so they don't come down here, I think it'd be worth my money at that point.
Yeah, but then everybody says it's also just they're manipulating the system. The politicians are doing things whoever pays them. You see this. Nikki Haley bought and sold by the military industrial complex. And that's not a me being conspiracy. That's literally her last job. Okay. And she's going to be
bought and sold for very shockingly low amounts of money as well. You see it for a lot of particular amendments.
You're like $2,300.
Yeah.
It's insane.
But there's also, you have to understand, my amendment here, if you kind of jumping around, but if you go down.
Yeah, I was going to say, I wanted to go through, we had the last three to go.
Okay.
Yeah, 3 more. I want to make sure we cover them before we run out of time here.
Sure. Let's just go. I'll do section 3. This is a parliamentary section. Right now, to vote on bills, etc., you have to be present in supposedly in Congress. There are many famous examples of senators on their deathbeds or being being wheeled in so they can give their vote. This thing here frees up. It says all U.S. senators can propose and vote on legislative bills from their states. All U.S. representatives can propose and vote on legislative bills from their districts and their state's capital. And all congressional committee and subcommittee meetings must be conducted by way of video conferencing. That one there enables the governors to vote from their states, the state assembly members to vote even in a district or when they come together in the state assembly to vote there. And also congressional committee and subcommittee meetings have to be done by way of video conferencing, which is great because then you can see what they're talking about. Then the next one, this is the most popular section of this amendment so far with everyone, is the U.S. President, Section 4, the U.S. President must physically visit every state in the Union and U.S. territory at least once a year. This amendment happens, Section 4 comes into effect. I will tell you what will happen. Every state in the Union will demand that the president spends 1 week in their state. And no matter how, if there's a deeply Democratic state and a Republican president or deeply Republican state and a Democratic president, each state's going to say, you damn well get here. And you're going to be here for a week.
And this the one president, though.
Right, one president. They still have to have an executive, just like governors. And so this president, unlike currently, there in our history, there have been presidents that practically never visited any other country, any other state. Our first one was George Washington. He visited all 13 states, which he felt he should do since he's representing them. But I think it wasn't until Nixon that there was a president that visited every state in the Union. And I think, going here's the Section 5. This addresses kind of the same issue. Section 5, the Capitol Hill building is no longer a functional building of the U.S. Congress. The White House is no longer the residence or office of the U.S. President. Both are made national monuments and turned over to the Smithsonian Institution for preservation, historical research, and public tours. The District of Columbia is stripped of its federal status and returned to the state of Maryland. Right now we have D.C., and it is the White House is a palace. It's a royal palace. You can't look at it and not view it as a royal palace. Congressmen.
Yeah, it's kind of old, though. It's not that nice.
Yeah, but there's a lot more to it underground. It's a huge network under. But anyways, in Washington, D.C., the president and U.S. senators and U.S. House of Representatives are treated like royalty. They are literally wined and dined by lobbyists. Some of the most expensive restaurants in the world are in Washington, D.C. And if you see a senator or a House representative eating there, he's not paying for that bill. It's the guy next to him that's a lobbyist for whatever trade organization or whatever group. They're paying for that. Washington, D.C. is a lobbyist heaven. It was like,
yeah, you wouldn't want me in there, dude. I'd be cheap. I'd be like, oh no, I just need like Foco de Chao when you got me, dude. Foco de Chao.
But look at what lobbyists have to do right now. Everyone, all these powerful people are in one city. So you can have a lobbying organization. Some of them have as low as one member, but they can have like 10 or so, and they can go around visiting all these people. When I've gone to Washington, D.C., you go through Capitol Hill, there are people waiting in line to get in to see a U.S. House representative or senator. All those are lobbyists waiting for their turn. My amendment shatters that. I destroy Washington, D.C. I don't drain the swamp. I leave it. Okay. Now those House representatives are spread in every state. So you have to go to 50 states to try to lobby in them. And if their state assembly isn't in session, well, they have to go to all their districts because that's what they're going to be, politicians. I mean, Washington, D.C. is a Tuesday through Thursday city, okay? Because come Friday, all the congressmen fly back to their states for fundraising, making public appearances, kissing babies, etc. And they fly back to Washington, D.C. on Monday so they can be in their state, their district, for Friday, Saturday, which is when people have most. And so they can go to the state fairs and all this type of stuff and meet a bunch of people. I eliminate that. There's no need. They're all in their states. Mm-hmm. So now you have a lobbyist who have had a gift from the spaghetti monster in the sky. Here are all these powerful people, one little spot, and you can easily go around and talk about, now I have them all 50 states. Good luck with that. Oh, you want to have time with the governor? Good luck with that. The governor might have just a few more things to do than a U.S. House representative. You are so low on his priority list that good luck trying to get into him. And also, now your money, okay, before Congress, lobbyists only had to influence 535 members. Me, even with the governor's state only being 50 in the Senate, now it's 5,512. How much money you got? Unlike our host here, who will be bought by offering him a hot dog.
No, Foco de Chao, not quite the hot dog, at least Brazilian barbecue.
But how much would you have to pay each one of these 5,512 to make them actually make it worth their while to do what you want done?
4 or 5 grand?
Yeah, times 5,512.
What is that? 20 mil?
Well, just give me each one.
Some people pay that.
Some people would, but not a lot of them. And then also you have to pay for the lobbyists and the organization, all the travel, etc. That's involved.
I would say dropping $10 million for a huge company to drop $10 million to alter political landscape. It's not a lot of money for Facebook.
No,
Google, like things like that, like tech companies.
But if everyone else is dropping that money too, there's always two sides to any issue. Mm-hmm. There are businesses. You have business that wants to go this way. You have another corporation that wants to go this way. They neutralize each other. Mm-hmm. And it's also just, how are you going to get into these doors? A lot of the lobbyists are former members of the U.S. House of Representatives and U.S. senators. That's how they get the door open to them. They're not waiting in line there's very few members of Congress actually have their office in the Capitol Hill building. There are buildings that are for their offices. They're right next to it. They're all like a triangular design, but getting into that office, just like public relations. Okay, if you want to go into public relations, you want to do public relations, work as a talent scout for Oprah. Well, when Oprah was actually meaningful, but that's where be a reporter for the New York Times, because that's why they hired them, because that reporter then can call up his buddy at the New York Times and say, hey, I got something I want to pitch you. That's the same thing was in Congress. That's why all those U.S. House representatives and senators become lobbyists. Look what Trump wants to pass. He would prohibit them from doing that. That's
Trump also said he wanted to be a dictator on day one. So I don't really know that I trust everything that he says factually.
Yeah, but I think Trump is a hand grenade, and we need a hand grenade right now.
Biden's the funniest, dude. Biden's not nearly
and entertaining, and you don't have,
life is way hotter than Biden's.
Yeah, yes. And look at how Biden is being treated. There's you can watch him on videos. There are foreign leaders that are making fun of Biden at press conferences. That's that's totally dissing the U.S. this then. Biden is mentally. If I was interviewed about Biden, the first question on my mouth was, you're president. You listen to Biden talk sometimes, and he refers to Obama as the president. They're handlers. Biden is a perfect example of a puppet politician. There are handlers behind him that are actually running in our government. We don't have a clue who they are, and they try to hide themselves as much. Trump, for all his stuff, he's the one pulling. If you hear a gun go off, it's his finger on the trigger. He ain't going to let anyone else pull that trigger. But with Biden, who knows where that shot came from? I think in the history, when history is done, I think Biden's going to be an example of elder abuse, and then it's going to be who is the real.
Oh, I feel bad for him more than anything.
It's a testament to not letting 80-year-olds run a country.
Yeah, it's pity. You listen to people talk about Biden, and they see a video of Biden just walking to the helicopter. As simple as that. Oh, and he walks like a zombie.
That one was rough when he was walking around the other day, trying to get off the set or something.
Yeah. Oh, look what they're doing to him. His own staff is humiliating him. He's been at public speakings, and he starts rattling off. And what does his staff do? They kill his mic. They turn off the lights. They have someone come up there and get him to leave. He turns around. He doesn't even know which way to go. They have to point to him. They have to give him literally a script. There have been, until they trained him, the teleprompter is different too, but they no longer put the cues on the teleprompter because he read everything on the teleprompter instead of stop talking. Yeah, they've had his little cheat sheet, okay, and then the cameraman were able to photo it, and it's exactly what he's doing right then. Is get up, shake hands, turn to your right, exit. My mother had Alzheimer's. She died of Alzheimer's. I have a degree in psychology. Biden has dementia. There's no question. There's no doubt. This is going to be probably the first presidential election since George Washington where there would not be a presidential debate. George Washington was elected to office unanimously. Has ever been elected to office unanimously. He didn't want it. God, it took Thomas Jefferson.
Did anyone run against him?
No, he didn't want it.
All right, well, there you go. Okay.
It took the smartest man alive, Thomas Jefferson, to get him to run for the presidency. George Washington didn't want to be general of the army. That's it. He wanted to go back home. Thomas Jefferson came and said, listen, if you're not president, you're the only unifying figure in this country. Everyone gets behind you. Mm-hmm. Are you going to sacrifice, toss into the garbage, what you have experienced in the Revolutionary War by not being present? And George Washington very reluctantly would say, fine. But during his first term, George Washington was very ill, so ill that they put down hay on the streets. It wasn't Washington, D.C. It was back in Pennsylvania, or Philadelphia. That's where the White House was. They put hay on the street so it wouldn't wake him. It took Thomas Jefferson to go in, again, smartest man alive, to get George Washington to do a second term. But even Thomas Jefferson knew he could never make George Washington serve a third term. George Washington was out. There are stories that when it came to the end of his term, he was all packed up and already sent everything he could home. There was no way you were going to stop him from leaving this office. And he made some statements about that, but and this country owes a huge debt to George Washington because he knew that he was being president, but setting precedent for all the presidents that were to follow him.
Yeah, you think they should have put him on a higher bill?
What?
No, I think
I think it's perfect that he's won. First of all, first president.
Oh yeah, actually, yeah,
$1
you're
bill.
more right.
The
Yeah.
most common used bill in the country, $1 bill. I think it's
Shit, I
very
ain't
appropriate.
seen nothing that's cost $1 in who knows how damn long. I'm always breaking out 20s at least.
But
I
anyway,
do want to. I was going to say if you want to cover section 6 of your
yeah, I'll do that right here.
too, because we're
This
a bit
one
over
here
what I
is a little bit
scheduled
different
for.
from the other sections, but it is state related. This is how to become a state. Section 6 says any country can become a U.S. territory if 2/3 in an open and free nationwide referendum vote to do so. After at least 5 years as a U.S. territory can become a state if at least 2/3 of its population can read, write, and converse in American English to an 8th grade level, and then at least 2/3 vote in favor in an open and free territory-wide a referendum. Any U.S. state or territory can succeed from the USA by a simple majority vote in an open and free state/territory-wide referendum. So we have made many states out of territories. In fact, almost all of them except for the original 13. And there used to be gigantic territories. Wisconsin territory was massive, and then it kept on being cut apart. But there's been horrible politics played and allowing a territory to become a state. Utah is a prime example. They refused to make Utah. There was nothing left. Utah was just there. There was just Utah, and they wouldn't allow Utah to become a state until they went against their religion and outlawed polygamy. Once they outlawed polygamy, then they were allowed to be a state. I'm an atheist, but I'm a libertarian. I don't believe government should be dictating your religion. Would I want 6 wives? No, I really don't want to have a heart attack. One's enough. Could you imagine if all of them were hen pickers? Oh my God, the guy, there had to be a suicide watch line for those guys. But it's just that I believe was a wrong abuse of power to force someone to change their religion, and they haven't. There are polygamy marriage. There are reality shows about polygamous marriages in Utah. Okay,
that's part too. You see how it works out.
Oh yeah, dude, that show has came unglued. Sister wives.
Oh yeah, but they didn't stop it. Okay, but they try to force a religion not to do it. And by the way, Islam allows, I think, 4 wives. Muhammad had more than that.
He did. Oh,
yeah, he had
boy,
a 9-year-old. He married a 9-year-old.
Yeah.
But even at that time, you read the Quran. I've read the Quran. His followers made fun of him about that. They was not cool back then. And
that's
so
good, at least.
What?
That's good. At least give a little bit of. Something.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of pushback. That's why in the Quran he literally came out with saying, well, whatever I say now, if there's a conflict between what I've said in the past and I've said now, well, what I'm saying now is what the case is. Muhammad couldn't even keep straight in his head everything he had said. Okay, Muhammad's
usually religions are very easy to define and understand all of their ideological beliefs.
Yeah, but you look when they talk about the Quran was peaceful.
Sounds kind of like peaceful. Muhammad is running our country.
But it became, once they gained power, then they became violent. It's just like, when you're out of power, you're okay with everybody. Hey, we can get along. Hey, but once you gain power, you're like, okay, now I have the power. And that shows, again, what's wrong with having government. So, I mean, this route here enables them to join. And I think it should be harder to join the United States than to leave the United States. If you don't like this country, and there are the libertarians that are right now trying to do this in New Hampshire, they're trying to get enough libertarians up there to succeed from the state. Okay, go ahead. I don't think even in New Hampshire there will be even a simple majority anywhere close that wants to leave the United States. I think it's just a libertarian fantasy. But you can see a lot of countries right now. We show that we have territories, but there's no route for how to become a territory. You can't apply. A country cannot apply to become a U.S. territory. I do not believe a country should go from a country to a state. I believe there should be a transitional period so that they can start getting their basically their country, now a territory, adjusted to our system, and then they have elections. Then they go from there. I believe we need to be able to converse in the same language. I think that there has to be a simulation. We don't have to have everyone simulate. I didn't say 100% have to speak at an 8th grade level, just 2/3. There are Jews, Orthodox Jews, in their exclusive enclaves in New York City that run their lives differently.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about the Mormons out in Utah, but I'm talking about the majority of people. I think that you have to have a common tongue. It's English for us, but if it was Spanish, I would be saying Spanish. Just having a common tongue so the majority of people can communicate with each other. But also a way for them to leave. And I think a lot of them, I think it says a lot better that it's hard to join us than it is to leave us. I think that needs to be said. And then like the section before, like stripping DC of its federal status, because it's the District of Columbia. Mm-hmm. It's not run by Maryland. But I get rid of the White House, I get rid of Congress. Who's left? The Supreme Court. If you think the Supreme Court will give a shit what the politicians of Maryland think, you have never read up about the Supreme Court. And I just leave it for them. They want to still be in Washington. They would want to be in Washington. Fine. But there's that also takes care of should Washington, D.C. be the 51st state? No, just let it go back. People don't realize that Washington, the District of Columbia, was actually a square. It went into Virginia. The Civil War, Virginia went with the Confederacy, and that's why we have this weird shape of the D.C. But originally, it went right across the river, and was surveyed by Washington, D.C. Our first president of the United States, one of his jobs was being a surveyor, and so he surveyed Washington, D.C. And by the way, he didn't want it to be named Washington, D.C. But a lot of stuff was forced on George Washington. And if you think about who are they going to name it after, it was going to be him. He gave up, but he never. But he never. But he surveyed it. But Washington, D.C. he didn't. There was no White House when he was president. That was Philadelphia. The D.C. was being prepared to be the seat of government. But now that I've returned the U.S. senators back to the states as the governors, I've returned the House of Representatives back to the states as state assembly members. I've closed down the White House and sent the president out, having to visit all the states and all the U.S. territories. What purpose is there for D.C.? And I think that it will remain there. But as politicians are out of that area, I think very quickly you're going to see all these federal agencies be moved to different parts of the country. All political maneuvering, a lot of politicians going, "Hey, you do me this favor, I'll owe you one because I really like to have the FBI building in Illinois." Mm-hmm. And you'll see, honestly, I can see where the state assembly members basically doing IOUs to our state, saying, "Hey, we really like to have, the Treasury Department in our state." But it's like right now, there are crime labs all over the country, and a lot of poor states use the crime labs of bigger states. Mm-hmm. You look at environmental regulation. There are many states that have whatever is okay in California is okay in their state. Saves them a whole bunch of time. California, does it cost them money? Yes, it does. But they get to decide what the policy is. And politicians love that. So it saves the poor state to say, okay, we do whatever they do. And if they don't like enough, then they just go to another state. Oh, we like what they do. And that has happened throughout history. So
maybe
it's
that
just
might be a good addition to your list. Every year have a like a God, what's a convention? They got to come by and say, hey, this year our best idea of the state was this. We had a
well,
pizza party on April 15th and everyone loved it. We should put in, all of you guys should have a pizza party. And then they come by and, oh, yeah. And then next year, 6 more states tried out the pizza party thing. Unless
well, here's the thing.
meeting of the minds.
A lot of people, there is a constitutional convention, and that's the threat that can be used to make this amendment pass. But I don't think that threat that's a threat that's used against the current House of Representatives because they really don't get much out of the amendment. But there is a constitutional convention that can be called by the states without Congress having anything to do with it. Is written in our Constitution. I believe this has I don't think what I'm proposing here is pure fantasy. Like this is never going to happen, for a simple fact that I'm not playing upon the good natures of politicians. I'm playing on their bad nature. What I'm offering them is a power grab. Politicians like more power.
Mm-hmm.
Governors are right now just governors of their state. I offer them power in the U.S. Senate. Okay. The state assembly members they only have power in their state. I offer them the power of the U.S. House of Representatives. Politicians love more power. But even the U.S. senators, there's a benefit for them to do it. Because the U.S. senators, all politicians have major egos. You can't be a politician if you do not have a major ego. You'd be crushed by what happens to you. I ran for office. I was in debates. I saw other ones that are not prepared for it get crushed.
And you didn't even have to go against the GOAT, dude.
Well, I had, yeah. But here's the thing. The U.S. senators, this is a power grab for them. First of all, I'm doubling their power in the U.S. Senate. It goes from 100 members to 50. And now the only thing they have to do is defeat that governor in their state, and they get that power. Well, all U.S. senators have already won statewide elections. That's how they became U.S. senators. The governor won a statewide election. If you don't think a U.S. senator will look at him going, I can beat you. People probably don't even know your name. I have bigger name recognition than you do. So you probably, when my amendment happens, you might have three-way heated, contested elections between the current governor and the 2 U.S. senators. And then you're going to get some U.S. House representatives who have national standing, et cetera, and they'll go after the governorship, But even if so the only ones that kind of lose in this whole thing is U.S. House of Representatives, but, there are representing a bigger district than state assembly members are. They would be considered a shoo-in to win their state assembly district. And also in this amendment, I don't do anything with the state senate. 49 of the states have state senates, and I think they should not be also federal politicians. I think it is good to have a body in each state that only is focused on the state and the state laws, so that you can have the state assembly member be looking at state and federal laws, et cetera, but the state senate looks at just the state laws. I think that would be a good counterbalance to them. The one state that doesn't is Nebraska. They have a unicameral, which means they just have a state assembly. They don't have a state senate. But that also be something to look at. How do they operate? I don't think there'd be a lot of difference. But I think having a state senate is actually a positive. I believe in separation of powers. I believe it was a good idea to have separate executive, separate judiciary, separate legislative. And for our Constitution, for our amendments, for our freedoms, it was very important that we had an independent judiciary. And parliamentary governments, like in England, they don't. Parliament runs everything. The president in their country is what we would call Speaker of the House. Okay, they don't have a Senate. They have House of Lords, but
I like that name.
Yeah, House of Lords. Yeah, but it's basically a retirement prize. Okay, no one pays attention. They have practically no power whatsoever. They're there because tradition. All the powers in the House.
I hate that.
But all the power is in the House of Commons, which is a parliamentary form of government. And they don't have an independent judiciary because if the judiciary contradicts them, well, all the power is in the House of Commons. They can just minor law. They can get rid of their judiciary. Our government has the U.S. Supreme Court independent. Now they are nominated by the president, confirmed by, I think, the Senate. I don't think the House of Representatives have anything to do with it. They try to, but they don't. And but then once they're elected to life. And so they're much more of a stable form of government. Our Supreme Court is probably the most stable aspect of our federal government because they're all elected for life and they will serve until they die. Because they know how important their position is and what they're supporting, et cetera. Do they get, is the court currently conservative? Yes, but it's also been liberal. 100 years after our country was founded, they found a Supreme Court that wanted to centralize power, and that's why we have federal government we have today. And that's why I have my amendment.
I think we need to punish them more often when they mess it up, though. Like a humiliating way, like feather them or something. Yeah, the Supreme Court, dude, they refuse to vote on things sometimes. They're just like, oh no, we're just gonna not do it.
Different hand.
Yeah, just gonna open that soda.
This guy has 3 hands. Oh my god. And faces the wrong direction.
Yeah, like if they refuse to vote, be like, actually, or make them vote. How about that? Can we make them vote? No more refuse to vote.
Supreme Court.
The Supreme Court. Yeah, a lot of times they'll say we're not making a judgment on this.
Right. Because they look at it and they don't think that it doesn't fall in their preview, or they don't disagree with the decision. And they commonly kick it back. The most common thing, people don't understand, the most common thing is federal Supreme Court kicking back suits that are brought to them. And they'll put down notes. Here, you need to look at this. To actually make it to the Supreme Court is very rare. If people knew how many cases are presented to the Supreme Court, that they have all these law clerks. It's like a filter system to try to get before the Supreme Court. And when they call it session, it's just playtime's over. Every lawyer that comes in there is coming in with their A game. They know that they are literally making history. I had a cousin, Roger Lindquist, have you ever heard of the cell phone company Metro PCS?
Yep.
Okay.
It's Metro now.
Yeah, Metro. He sold it to T-Mobile. He's the one that founded it. He's the president of it, largest stockholder of it. The only reason he sold it is because he had brain cancer. He got in the recession, and then came back and it killed him. That's the only reason why. Yeah, really cool guy. Really cool guy. His mother, he was raised by a single mother during a time when being a single mom was not a cool thing. And he just extremely bright. Anyways, he's a Republican supporter. And Clinton tried to take away his licenses, his cell phone licenses. And he went all the way to the Supreme Court and won it. So, when it was up before Supreme Court, his company was basically worth nothing. And I got a whole bunch of stock. And the stock was worth less than a penny per share. Because if the court did not vote in his favor, it'd be nothing. Right. They did. And all of a sudden, so I could get a lot of shares, and it didn't even amount to $600. But once it happened, then all of a sudden the shares were wealthy. But that's really rare to get before the Supreme Court. And a lot of people also don't understand there is a funneling system to get to the Supreme Court. There are stories of that. I mean, you're normally talking years. Rarely does Supreme Court act kind of like in the present. Okay. Some are calling upon the Supreme Court right now to get the gag order taken off of Trump because that's against the First Amendment. And right now, it's the Justice Department, the federal Justice Department is being unbelievably damaged by
Yeah,
these.
see, we got to put the pressure on them. We need to put more pressure on them so they have to do some stuff. Say we're not doing it or not. Maybe we need
the Supreme Court's going to act. I have no doubt, because if you read the history of Supreme Court, but they're not operating on our timeline, because they realize anything they do is when the Supreme Court acts, when it makes a decision, not kicking back. Kicking back is saying, oh, you need to work on this more. But when they make a decision, they know. They're like George Washington. They know the actions they do will have ramifications wide throughout the country. And so they're not rushing. I would never want them to be elected. I would never want anything by them be elected. I want to be if I was doing anything, I'd add on layers. Let's make it even harder for something to get to these guys.
Yeah, dude, I like that. They have the A, Supreme Court A, and then have some lower levels that we get to watch on TV.
Yeah,
they're the appellate courts.
But make it more, fun. We got to make it more fun for TV.
Yeah. I think
Flavor Flav. Like step one is you're bringing it to like Boosie. All right, that's your first court, and if it's not even getting through him, then of course we're not bringing it to the next guy. And he'll be like, "Come on, man, you want me to do what, man? We are not going to put that past this law."
Watch what the Supreme Court is going to be doing here after all this settles down. They know the justice system has been harmed by what is happening to Trump. It's a clear violation of his First Amendment rights. It is clearly the federal government the Justice Department meddling in elections. I would not be at all surprised that when Donald Trump gets elected, that he will abolish the FBI and abolish the Department of Justice. There's a constitutional lawyer. Viva is the guy. There's a YouTube channel. And these are two, a Canadian and an American, and Barnes, Viva and Barnes. Barnes is a constitutional lawyer, and in one of their live streams, I asked him, is there any need for the Justice Department, FBI? He says, oh, none. There's no need for them. They're just right now, and they have been political weapons. You read about like John F. Kennedy when the steel workers went on strike. Mm-hmm. Used the FBI, went and basically raided all the executives of those steel companies. Was a major asshole. They're just political weapons, and always have been. The FBI, Edgar Hoover blackmailed presidents and members of Congress to stay in office.
I kind of like that though, dude. Hoover, he was kind of doing some shit there. It's kind of it's fun to read about.
Oh yeah, how he surveyed everybody. How everyone was.
He had the dirt on everybody. He's the only one that really knew what was up. You got to have a guy who kind of knows what's really up. So when they all start colluding and telling you, bending the truth, he can come in. This little weird balding guy can come in and say, "No, I've been listening in on it."
But he's the one that bent the truth. He selectively showed members, like Martin Luther King. He had actually communists in his entourage. Okay, but was Martin Luther King a communist? No, but it was part of a movement, a fellow traveler. But Edgar Hoover only showed members of Congress, well, here are all these communists, not showing all the other type of people that surrounded Martin Luther King, who had a huge entourage. I mean, everyone knew at the time. Everyone knew at the time that Martin Luther King was making history. Everyone wanted to be next to him. Of course, he talked to Joe Biden. He was practically walking with a hand down the streets. So anyways. So
anyway, I will say we do have to wrap up here because we went a bit over what I'd applaud for. So I apologize for cutting us off so starkly here at the end. But I was supposed to leave about 30 minutes ago, so I'm a little late.
All right.
It's all good. Where can people go to check out your amendment, and what would you recommend to people looking to get into it?
If you want to get into it right now, I'm just trying to build up my X account, my Twitter account. The best thing, if anyone wants to do at this stage, I'm just letting this thing organically grow, is just to go to my Twitter account, which is @ Jack, the letter T, Decker. So it's Jack T. Decker at Twitter. Ooh. And follow me there.
Nelson.
What?
Kind of like a Craig T. Nelson type thing going there.
Yeah, I want right now. I'm just letting this organically grow. I'm doing all podcasts right now. I'm purposely not pitching radio or TV talk shows. I'm not trying to get interviewed by the press. I'm cutting my teeth on you guys. The questions you ask. I mean, it's kind of like I'm a metal. I'm being hammered into shape. I've had some very hostile interviews overseas, especially in the UK. I don't, they really do hate our system. Yeah, they do. And, but it's all just, I want to, like I said, cut my teeth on podcasts. So I'm letting this grow. I have a big YouTuber who's a follower of my ex account and contacted me. And I was like, holy shit, this is like, I can't give his name because he's told me not to, but huge. And then he says, when you get 1 million followers on Twitter, then I'll have you on my show. Like, right now I'm just barely reaching 700. But yeah, I understand why he wants to have me to bring people to his channel. And also I've talked to him more than once, and he's been giving me advice. And one of it is doing podcasts, becoming a better guest. Initially, oh my gosh, I went on tangents like crazy. There's a channel with a vet, and first hour we just talked about vet stuff. We get to the amendment, so I came back at a later time, and we still talked about vet stuff. And so at the end, I was cramming in the amendment at the very end. So no, if anyone wants to help, right now I'm just letting it organically grow. I'm not in a rush. I'm not doing this for a living. I want a lot of follow. I'm trying to. If they want to help, just join my Twitter be a follower of me on Twitter. I'm not doing anywhere else. I don't have a YouTube channel. I'm not on Instagram or anything like that. Just that. I think that's it's the right community square to be on. Mm-hmm. And once I get larger, and this guy wasn't the only one. There are others that have said I have to get up to X amount of followers on X before they have me on. Some are just as low as 10,000. They're 100,000. He's the only one that was at 1 million. But my gosh, I get on him, I'll explode. But to be honest about it, am I ready for him? I need to talk to you guys.
Dude, wink if it's Alex Jones.
No, I can safely say it's not Alex Jones.
Oh, damn.
Someone I would say is bigger.
Bigger than Alex Jones. Wow.
Yeah. But he doesn't want. He doesn't want me to reveal his name. In fact, if I do, I won't be on his show. And I can understand.
I'll definitely don't do it then, dude.
Yeah. So, but I'm hoping. It's just like I paid for advertising on X until I hit 500, and I felt I need to have at least I need a certain amount, a certain inertia. And now I am no longer advertising on X, and I've gone from 500. I'm almost to 700, and it's just constantly growing. And every time I do a show like this, I get new followers. A lot of people DM you. I really wish if they would like to help, tweet, retweet, publicly post. How do I post? I make an appearance on a podcast, and I will get hundreds. One time we got over 1,000 DMs. Just and I'm trying, and a lot of my time now is just replying to DMs, and I just wish people would just reply publicly, because then get a little bit more mileage out of it, and other people can chime in.
It opens it up for public discourse as opposed to I want to keep my conversation secret, so it's not so that it's a
over and over again. And it's the same one, the worded just a little bit differently, but it's gotten to the point now where I have doc files, that when someone has this question, I copy, paste, read over, make sure it fits, and then send it. And it's just because I kept on typing over the same answers over and over again. Oh my God. So I started making them. I now have like 100 files on my computer screen that I get up, and rarely, it's kind of like, to me now, it's really quick. I go, like, if you guys, who knows how many will DM me, okay, oh, yeah, there we go. And then I get one that, oh, that's, wow, someone asked me something I haven't been asked before? Well, that's cool. And then I make up another document and add to the 100 plus I have right now.
Yeah.
And like, well, you guys, I always am interested when someone asks me, people can't see you, but Klossner?
Oh yeah, that's my email. Yeah, clause. That's my thing. I just cut
love it when someone humorously interviews and puts out bizarre and outrageous stuff. It's fun,
I don't actually know enough about anything to be serious. So.
Well, when I've done interviews with political science professors, oh my God, it's so dry. It's just, I feel like back in class. Yes. What was the question? Yes. It's just, the only thing I'm missing is like filling in the dot. Okay. And I knew the questions. I don't mind them. I mean, they're the ones that made the revision of me dropping off the original section 1 was because so many people thought I was trying to go back to the Articles of Confederation. And this document will change. I mean, anyone thinks that what I've just read is going to be what's going to go in. I've had constitutional scholars read over and I said, do you have any changes? Oh yeah, I have, but you're good to go. It says that's your voice. It says like one of them said, if I wrote it, you'd hear my voice. And he says, you have your voice. And he said, when you get to the stage that this might actually be added, no, he says, you're going to have like the Cato Institute, you're going to have the Heritage Foundation, you're going to have major think tanks come in and they're going to take this thing and then make it into the proper legalese. But he says, don't you worry about that. Don't go to law school, just wrap your memory. He says, just keep it in your own words. And don't worry about that. That's way, way down the line. And he says they'll take care of it then. And no one's he says, don't worry, they're not going to change it, but they're just going to make it, he says, in proper legalese. And they said, is it proper legalese now? And I haven't said that. They go, no. Oh, you're serious. No, it's not proper legalese. But they wanted just like, the federal papers. The Supreme Court goes back and reads the federal papers to understand what the founding fathers meant when they were discussing this. But is that legalese? No, those are just correspondence. Yeah. So just keep this natural, have it in my voice. Don't worry about it, how it's going to be. It'll be something like this, but it'll be in proper legalese. And we're going to change it. I mean, I've been working on this for probably 20 years, and just now I've decided it's time because of me being laid up with this injury. I have the time to do it. If I can sit and talk to anybody. I don't keep hours. So someone in Australia wants to talk to me, set the alarm clock, wake up. Hey, how are you doing? I drink a lot of 5-hour energy drinks at times. It's like, So anyways, appreciate you guys having me on.
Thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it. It was vastly different than a lot of the conversations we've had previously. We don't usually get a lot in depth into U.S. politics and just the different processes and things like that. So it's always fun having different opinions and just new types of information coming in. So it was a really good time having you on.
Oh, I appreciate that. I try to be well read. I mean, I've been reading about this stuff for years, and I just feel like now's the time. I mean, my big hope is that one of the politicians, it'd be lovely if Trump were to do it, but just one of the presidential candidates were to go, hey, if Trump were to go, this is an okay idea. Wow, everything would explode for me. Not saying him endorsing it, just like, that's an interesting idea. And then it would take off. If Elon Musk were to look at it and go, just retweet it and go like, I don't know, the 100%. I don't really understand what that all is supposed to mean, but 100% with two or three lines underneath, maybe like 100% agree.
I see. Okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, or giving it a thumbs up.
Oh, the 100.
Yeah, keeping it.
What's that? Does that mean
it just means 100% like agree?
Yeah. Oh, okay. But I thought this was also agree. So it's just another way of saying agree.
Yeah, basically.
Trying to be hip. They're a little behind the times on that.
Yeah.
One.
Yeah, but I mean, it's if you were to do that, this would all explode.
Yeah.
You know, I've had major YouTubers contact me, and they have told me, yeah, this is going to, if I were to do this, they would do it. It would explode. But they said, I need to, what was one says, I need to simmer more. It says, you need to, my answers, etc. I need to be more disciplined. You know, like right now, I should be really respecting your time limit, and I'm sorry that I did.
No, it's all good.
Yeah.
But
so
no, thank you so
I'll
much
be quiet so we can end this.
We really do appreciate you taking the time. Sorry, our scheduling got a little confused at the beginning before when we started recording, but appreciate it. So
no problem.
Check out Keep That Girl on Twitter. We don't call it X, it's Twitter. It'll always be Twitter.
I don't either.
Go check out deadjustproductions.live. Links to all of our stuff on there. And go check out Classic Commotion over on YouTube. New episodes every Sunday.
Except one coming. I got a sick intro I made.
I listened. I don't know if you updated it since you sent it over to me, but if that's what you're talking about, but no,
I haven't updated it at all. But
it's
that's
great.
the same one. I need to mess with it.
Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for listening. Appreciate it. We'll see you all next time. Bye.